I'm Barbara Christiansen with the Daily Herald, and we're doing a series of profiles on the candidates for Provo Municipal Council race. Today I have with me Howard Stone, who is running for the council seat in District 4. Welcome, Howard.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a couple of questions for you.
Yes, ma'am.
Like 5. And we'll start with, what are 3 of the most critical issues facing Provo, and how would you address them?
I would say the 3 important issues facing Provo are going to be the implementation of BRT, and what the side effects of that are going to be to the residents of the city. I think the 9th East neighborhood was a distraction, and everyone has taken their eye off the main artery of the city, which is University Avenue, and what the BRT development is really going to mean to University after it's fully in place. I would say the economy is booming here a bit, and unemployment is lower than other states, but we certainly need more companies moving in to the city which are providing full-time employment and not part-time employment, not offering pizzas on Friday and basketball courts in the middle of the office area and ping pong tables. But although those might be nice perks, but they're typically employing people 30-hour work weeks so that they can not pay them full benefits. So we need more substantial employers, and not necessarily more retail, although retail is good, but we need the return of companies like Novell to the Valley, or companies like them. And I think the next thing is the residents of Provo are not very involved in the city. City council meetings are a wasteland. Basically, you have the mayor and 7 council people there, and the burden of the city is upon their shoulders. And if the residents don't get more involved, don't, as it were, get back on their porch swing, start talking to their neighbors, start being more involved with school boards, county commissions, city councils. The original Homeland Security was the porch swing, but I think the advent of air conditioning brought people in the house, and then television kept them there. So unless the residents are able to wean themselves off their cable TV or other electronic devices and come down to the city and get more involved, we really can't we can't hope for more than what our involvement would bring.
So how would you solve that problem?
I don't know. Maybe we need to have free, like R.C. Willey offers some free hot dogs at the city on Fridays, but it's something. You know, the politicians used to fly home for the summer, but when back in the 50s, but when air conditioning came around, they all stayed in Washington and got into more trouble, and then we don't see our politicians very often anymore. I used to invite our congressmen and senators to speak after the parade at the Freedom Festival, which I was involved in operations of for some 16 years in downtown Provo. After I left, this activity ceased, and it was one of the few times that we could get Senator Hatch or Senator Bennett or Congressman Cannon, it's been that long, to come down and just be available to answer questions with the public in a very disarming environment. And maybe we would need to start doing more of this, just get our national leaders involved, again, on a local level, meeting the public, it will require a lot of work on everyone's part. Don't look at me myself to be able to provide be the catalyst. Maybe I could be the catalyst, but we've all got to work together on the
Sure.
solutions.
Yeah. It's kind of like a two-way street. The residents have to find something that's interesting to them, something that they feel a passion or something about, but they have to know what there is. So would you have some sort of outreach to let them know? There's talk about the newsletter in Provo being a waste of paper. What would you suggest to take that place?
Well, that's a dilemma because everything is going electronic, but we have a young population and we have a elderly population as well that aren't as plugged in as the millennials are. And so they would be left out on one hand, and the millennials aren't reading the paper, but we are probably looking for nothing short of a miracle here. That's all I can say.
Mm-hmm. So, okay. Well, the next question is that you mentioned retail, but a lot of people who come to Provo and the people who live here have asked for different types of retail businesses. What do you think Provo should seek, and how should it go about that?
Well, I would look to the University Mall as a guidelines. They have done very well over the years. They were the first mall in the valley. Once upon a time, Provo 30 years ago, or 35 years ago, had the opportunity to have the first mall down just off of Center Street and Freedom Boulevard. But that was passed on by the current city fathers at that time, and it went up and found a home in Orem. Later on, under Mayor Stewart's administration, he was able to bring in the Provo Town Mall. Now, the University Mall has always been closed on Sunday and seems to be a mall that's operating better economically. In fact, after the Provo Town Mall went in and shortly thereafter Riverwoods was created, a lot of the retailers in those two places were drawn away by economic development offices in Orem up to University Mall. I would probably hire the Orem economic director in Provo and tell him to get to work and bring everything back that he let slip away. And we might need to go up to Lehigh and hire their economic director, because there's a lot of stuff is now slipping away up north to Lehigh as well. But that's a real dilemma as well.
Okay. Are you for or against the RAP tax, and why? And of course, by the time you would take office, that will be decided. So if it passes, how would that affect how you would address it?
I think as a population we are overtaxed anyway, and we don't really need new taxes. Some 15 years ago now, when the city fathers felt it best to bond for iProvo and put us $40 million in debt, and when we had just passed the library bond, we were now paying bond fees for the library and also for iProvo. And from what I understand, there was quite a bit of city employee time working alongside contractors during the installation of iProvo that actually kept down costs that they couldn't include in the bond. Since then, we have created the Provo Rec Center, which I almost feel should have been a county rec center, which they have several of around the Salt Lake Valley, which seem to do very well. You have entities like Springville, Spanish Fork, that either have depleted or non-year-round facilities. Mapleton as well, and Salem, which, if this had been a county bonded recreation facility, it would have been a catalyst to draw in and have a wider support group outside our city limits. And now Springville and these other cities are trying to bond for their own centers, but they're smaller municipalities, and the kind of facility they'll be able to get will not be quite what we've done here in Provo. So, and since Mayor Curtis has taken office, he has additionally added to our power bill a fee for iProvo. He's raised, they've created new fees, and they've raised fees for, say, our trash collection, and created opt-out programs for recycling, which basically took some freedom away from residents initially to join the program. They put them in a position to get out. You're going to be in unless you make the effort. And if they weren't reading their city newsletter, a blue can showed up in front of their house. So a lot of fees and taxes a fee is another kind of a tax. And creating a wrap tax, again, it's another revenue stream. I gather, off the sales tax, 0.25% here and there, much like the county does for funding UTA, funding Front Runner and BRT and other things. But the state now is looking to create another tax to fund UTA to the tune of 40% of what that brings in. So either we're not managing the money that we're getting now very well, and we're needing to go to look for new funding sources. I am real skeptical of a new tax, of a wrap tax, with the other taxes and fees that we're already paying.
Okay. What sort of identity do you think Provo should have, and how important is it to have something like that, that's something that a community is known for?
I would say Provo should be known for a well-educated, ethical populace. Right now, many of the big financial firms across the nation are struggling because of people they've hired and the ethical, moral behavior that they exude as employees in these organizations. BYU has one of the highest rated business and accounting programs and law programs in the country, largely due to BYU and the type of students that BYU is able to produce. They are very, along with their education, they're very moral and very ethical. And I think as times get a little more difficult here nationwide, our populace is going to shine as a source for both hiring and also for companies to move to hire our from our population base.
So how would you let people know about this, like around the country, to say, hey, we've got something here that you would like?
Well, I think BYU is already doing a very good job of doing this. And I think we underutilize the resource of BYU. Some years ago, the city hired, when Mayor Curtis came on board, a Madison Avenue firm to rename Provo, to get us a mantra, which is now Welcome Home. They laid out $250,000, $500,000, when just right up the hill at BYU we have very we have MBA students, marketing students. We have these resources, and I think if groups were set up in different classes as class projects or group projects, strategies would have come forth to us, which would have saved us nearly $500,000 in rebranding the city. So I think we're not thinking this out very smartly. We're back in the dot-com bubble of 2001, 2000 to 2001, which popped. These companies were popping up everywhere, and they would come in and buy desks, $1,000 chairs, $2,000 desks, and bring in expensive computers, and they would have people sitting there at these desks doing nothing but twiddling their thumbs. And when the thing fell apart, it was all vaporware. It was, and I've lived through this, and I think as a city we're spending money unnecessarily on resources that are already available to us.
Okay, I think you've brought me to my last question here. What talents or skills would you bring to the council?
Well, I have an experience out of high school being in the military, where I was in charge of manpower, material, and resources, and men's lives were in my hands, and I had to be responsible and make decisions all the time that provided for the safety for the men under my charge. I've well educated with my graduate and undergraduate and graduate degrees from BYU, and I've been in the high-tech industry for 20 plus years. I am, with this collection of experience, as suited for the job as anyone would be with similar experience. However, I'm not really running my horse at full speed for the race this year.
Why is that?
Because I feel like Kay Van Buren is a good man. I and Kay think and vote nearly alike on most of the issues. And I made myself available for this race only if Kay decided to pull out and to not leave a vacancy there and then have an appointment by maybe folks on the council who might not think and feel like the folks in West Provo, Northwest Provo. I'm just a backup to Kay Van Buren. So I'm encouraging all of you out there that will be voting this round to vote for Kay Van Buren and support him by showing up to your city council meetings and bringing your friends from across the city.
One other question then, we're only supposed to do this part here, but why didn't you run for the citywide seat, and then people could have had both of you?
Well, Mayor Stuart, who's been on the council before and also mayor before of the city, is probably better suited to be in that position. And I'm supporting Mayor Stuart in his campaign to come back to the council, and Mayor Stuart has made some good decisions in the past, especially considering downtown businesses and keeping the Downtown Business Alliance, which again is another unfair tax placed upon business owners in downtown Provo. He was one of the wise people on the council at that time, which encouraged the council to drop the campaign to continue to fund the Downtown Business Alliance as it once had. So I work a lot with downtown businesses, and I think a lot of Mayor Stuart and his efforts on that earlier campaign when he was on the council. So I did not want to oppose Mayor Stuart.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you very much for your time.
You're very welcome.
Okay.